As the preseason concludes and we are just days away from the start of the regular season, it is now time to start putting out our predictions for this upcoming season. I know a lot of people have been asking me, how do you see the Eastern Conference shaping up and where do the Bulls sit within that for the season? I kept saying this is honestly going to be the hardest year to predict how the Eastern Conference standings are going to look like, especially for the Chicago Bulls because of the uncertainty surrounding Lonzo Ball and when he'll be returning. And I mentioned I always hold off on giving my standing predictions until after the preseason and before the start of the regular season to see how teams are looking in preseason play, because even though preseason means nothing from a standings perspective, it does give you an indication of how teams are looking from a chemistry perspective and how certain individuals are looking in terms of shaping up to have a breakout season. So in today's video, I'll be giving my Eastern Conference predictions as far as where teams will finish 1 through 15. And while I'm going through it, you guys let me know in the comments where you agree or disagree. So what's going on, everyone? You're listening to Bulls Central here. Hope you're all doing well. Be sure to subscribe if you're new to the channel, as I'll be covering the Bulls all season long. Now, I've said this before, but this is by far and away the most competitive the Eastern Conference has been in over 2 decades. You always heard the jokes of it being the Eastern Conference. You would have teams that would be able to finish with the 6th seed or the 5th seed and be 4 games below 500. I mean, really, the Eastern Conference, aside from a few top teams over the years, has been pretty bad. But now you legit have 10 to 12 teams who can really be playoff contending teams. You can argue that they should be a playoff team. Like, don't forget the Bulls. Yes, the Bulls were projected to finish 12th in the Eastern Conference according to ESPN. I already made a video on just how insanely terrible that projection is, so I won't belabor the point here. But the point is, if the Bulls are being projected to finish 12th in the East, and I don't know about you, but I definitely consider the Bulls a playoff team, then yeah, there are 12 teams who are going to be vying for the playoffs. Now, the other thing which I just mentioned is that this is probably the hardest it's ever been to predict how teams are going to finish in the East because of the parity that will exist between the teams, as well as the fact that every game is going to be so critical in how tightly close teams are going to be positioning for seeding. Like, I would not be surprised if seeds 5 through 9 finish the season only separated by 3 or 4 games. It's going to be that close, even all the way up to the top. But despite all of that, I'm going to give my best attempt to predict how the Eastern Conference standings are going to shake out. And I'll start with number 1, which is the Milwaukee Bucks. I know most people are going to put Boston or even Philly here, but I think with everything that happened with Ime Udoka and being suspended for the season and most likely not going to be coaching the Boston Celtics ever again, I actually think that's going to have an impact on their team chemistry and their identity. I think they're going to be a great team. They'll be in the top of the East, which I'll get to, but a first-time head coach, only 34 years old. Like, some of the players are going to be older than that coach. I know he was already a part of the coaching staff last year as an assistant, and it's going to probably be the same scheme and mentality for how they're going to play together, but losing your head coach after only 1 year, who just took you to the finals, is going to be a very odd situation for them. But anyway, for the Bucks, I mean, as much as I hate to say it, because the Bucks have sort of become a rivalry of sorts for the Bulls, and I hate them more than ever after the shit that Grayson Allen pulled last season against Caruso, but they're one of the best teams in the league. They're actually my favorite to win the championship. When you have Giannis as dominant as he was and continues to be, veterans like Chris Middleton and Drew Holiday, you have the complementary role pieces and shooters in Pat Connaughton, Grayson Allen. You've also got Bobby Portis, who has been great for them, Brook Lopez. Like, it's a stacked team, and I just don't see how anyone is going to be beating them out in the standings. For the number 2 seed, I've got the Philadelphia 76ers. I know some will say this is a little high for them, but I really do think Joel Embiid is going to have a monster of a season. He already did last year, as he was an MVP candidate. You look at James Harden and how he slimmed down, seems to be focused on perfecting his game and his desire to win. Just seems like a different type of mentality from Harden that we haven't really seen before, which is why I expect the Sixers to be really coming out very hungry this season. On top of that, you have one of the better forwards in the game, a borderline all-star in Tobias Harris. They added PJ Tucker, which I think is going to be a big pickup for them to give them even more veteran experience. And then don't forget, they were able to trade Ben Simmons but still keep their younger core players in Tyrese Maxey and Matisse Thybulle, who are great offensive and defensive complements respectively. So when you think about their depth combined with their superstar power, I really do think that they're going to have a great season. Third, this is where I have the Boston Celtics. You know, aside from the potential hit to their chemistry because the situation with Ime Udoka, which I just talked about, but I actually think one thing people are overlooking is the potential locker room issue that could arise with the rumors that the Celtics were looking to ship Jaylen Brown in a package that was going to get them Kevin Durant. Now, the trade never came to fruition, obviously, and that trade proposed was never actually confirmed, but multiple sources, and credible sources I might add, did say that the Celtics had offered, I believe it was Jaylen Brown, Marcus Smart, might have been a few other fillers and some picks. The rumors the Nets wanted more, the Celtics said no thanks, and the trade negotiations ceased from there. Once that rumor broke, that Jaylen Brown was being included in a trade package for Kevin Durant, you had Jaylen Brown on Twitter just saying, "Shake my head." Obviously, he didn't take too kindly to that, especially after he arguably had a better final series than Jason Tatum did, and is a huge reason for the Celtics' success last season. Not sure how the Celtics let this leak. If they were in fact negotiating a trade for Kevin Durant, I don't blame them, because if you can make a trade for KD work and add him to the team that already went to the finals, yeah, you have to do it, no question, but still keep that stuff under wraps until a trade actually goes through. But anyway, that was long-winded to say, I think there are going to be some issues with this team, not from a talent and fit perspective, but just from a politics, team culture perspective, because of what happened with Udoka and because of Jaylen Brown not feeling valued by the team. Tatum is still going to be great. Robert Williams is only going to continue to get better. Oh, I almost forgot. Or sorry, not Robert Williams. Grant Williams is only going to continue to get better. And I almost forgot Malcolm Brogdon. Like, if he can stay healthy, that's going to be critical for them to have an actual playmaking point guard who can score and play defense. And they really didn't have to give up too much in a trade for him either. So again, I still think they're going to be a good team. Like, third in the East in a stacked Eastern Conference is still great. I just don't see them making it out of the East like they did last season. Now, fourth, this is probably where I'm going to get the most criticism, and likely is going to create a little bit of controversy in the comments, and that's because I have the Brooklyn Nets at fourth. I know most outlets, fans, GMs don't have the Nets finishing in the top 6, given they had to play in the play-in tournament last year and ended up getting swept by the Celtics in the first round. But look, the fact of the matter is they have Kevin Durant. Say what you will about the guy, I don't like him as a person, I can't stand his antics, and his pettiness is borderline child level, but he's one of the best players in the league, a top 5 player in the NBA, one of the best scorers the game has ever seen. I know he's 35, I believe. I know he's been injury prone, which, yes, if he gets injured, that obviously changes things, but this is going to be a year of KD with a vengeance after everything that happened last season and all the drama from the offseason as well. Kevin Durant wants to win, and win so badly to show that he's capable of winning a title as the top dog, and not after he took the easy route and joining a 73-win team that he blew a 3-1 lead to in the conference finals. So I fully expect Kevin Durant to be locked in and ready to play his best basketball to win a championship, even though I don't think they're a title team, but Kevin Durant is going to view it that way. And of course, they still have Kyrie Irving, all the ridiculous shenanigans that he's pulled throughout his career, whether wanting to play, whether not wanting to get the vaccine, whether getting injured. Yes, you don't really know what to expect from Kyrie and whether he's actually going to be available on a given night. But what we do know is when Kyrie does play and is healthy, he's one of the most skilled players in the league with his insane handles, freak athleticism, empowering to the basket, as well as his great shooting. Again, he's a wild card. But this season, he won't have to worry about not being able to play because of the vaccine. So as long as he's not taking random games off because of religious reasons or whatever it is, he's going to be a nightmare to guard for most teams. And then, of course, you can't write off Ben Simmons. Hasn't played in a year, hasn't looked that great, at least from what we've seen in the preseason, but he's still one of the better defenders in the game, a great passer, a decent enough of a scorer to be a third option behind Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving. The guy was just an all-star and a first-team all-defensive player just 2 years ago. He's a good player, just a matter of whether he'll get his mind right and not be so passive on the court when it comes to taking shots. Likely that will not be fixed. I don't think he's ever going to just suddenly develop a jump shot. But when you have Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving, oh, and don't forget Seth Curry and Joe Harris, you don't really have to rely on his shooting as much as you would have when he was on the Sixers. Seth Curry and Joe Harris, I forgot to mention them because those are both great outside shooting threats to add to your already arsenal star power. So anyway, long-winded response to say yes. This is why I have the Nets finishing fourth, because I think Kevin Durant is still going to be on a mission this season, and they still have other stars on their roster to complement Kevin Durant, not to mention also all their role players. Fifth, this is where I have the Miami Heat. Obviously a big fall off from last year considering they finished first in the East, but the reason for it is they didn't really do much to add to their roster. In fact, they lost a key role player in PJ Tucker. They extended Tyler Hero on an insane contract. That's the second massive contract the Heat have given out to a fairly one-dimensional player in Duncan Robinson and now Tyler Hero. Although Hero is a better player than Robinson, obviously is more versatile than Duncan Robinson is. But either way, I think the contract is going to come back to bite them. I think Jimmy, I believe he's going to somewhat decline. I think he's still going to be an all-star level player, but maybe not what we once saw. And he himself has had his health issues in the past. Kyle Lowry, he's already on the decline. Time will tell how much farther he'll fall off going into his year 37 season. Bam is great, and I think he'll be fine. They've got the shooting with Strus, Gabe Vincent, he's solid as well, but their depth isn't really anything that wows me to say that they'll be better than the 4 teams I have ahead of them. Maybe the Nets, but even that I question for the Heat. Then at number 6, I have our Chicago Bulls. Yes, finishing as the same seed as last season, although this season, it's going to take a lot more to accomplish that. I know a lot of people, including a lot of Bulls fans, actually will say that I'm delusional, that after all the moves teams like the Hawks and the Cavs made, how can I possibly think the Bulls will be better than them? Well, for one, I'm still going to be biased towards my team. I'll fully admit that, but I also don't think it's wildly impossible for the Bulls to be better than those teams. Like, we don't know how both the Cavs and the Hawks are going to do in adjusting to their new look rosters. We don't know if their egos are going to clash when you add another all-star on the team who was used to being the best player on their respective teams before being traded. It's very possible the fit between Trae Young and DeJounte Murray could be a disaster given they're both players so used to having the ball in their hands. The duo of Darius Garland and Donovan Mitchell sounds nice in principle, but they're going to be a disaster in guarding the perimeter. And while yes, the Cavs have strong interior defense with guys like Jarrett Allen and Evan Mobley, they're not known for their ability to step out and guard the 3-ball. Anyway, I'll get to those teams in a second, but the point is the Bulls, even if Lonzo misses near half the season, I think DeMar, who has still looked great in the preseason, Zach Lavine, who hopefully shakes off some of the offseason rust that we saw in the preseason, Vucevic, who is playing in a contract year and is already looking significantly better than last year in terms of his offense, aggression in the paint, and improved outside shot. You compound that with the fact that so far anyway, Javonte Green is looking like he's trying to show the league that he deserves more than just a minimum contract, also another player in a contract year. Dosunmu, second season jump. He's looked great so far. He's also in a contract year. Patrick Williams, who yes, still hasn't looked like the player that we've all been hoping he would be, but if he can make that third-year jump for the Bulls, that would be huge for their overall success. But aside from the obvious that I just mentioned, I think the depth of this Bulls roster is underrated. Like, for all the criticism that we have been giving the Bulls front office for their lack of moves this past year, while the rest of the East was getting better, they added 2 players who in my view are upgrades over their previous options. Andre Drummond over Tristan Thompson, and Goran Dragic way better than Matt Thomas. You still have one of the best perimeter defenders and hustlers coming off the bench in Alex Caruso. Derrick Jones Jr. re-signing him I think was an underrated move, especially for the contract they got him on. Javonte Green, like I mentioned, gives the Bulls another layer of depth and versatility if he keeps playing like he did in the preseason. So I'm not saying this is going to be a contending team. Yes, I'm biased, but I'm also not delusional. Like, this roster is far from perfect and still has a ways to go before they can get to the next level, but I really do think that the 6th seed is attainable. Health is obviously going to be the biggest factor. How long is Lonzo going to have to be out? If in the worst case scenario he has to miss the whole season, then no, it's very possible the Bulls are just a play-in team. At 7, this is where I have the Cleveland Cavaliers. This is going to be a very good team. Like, really, if you want to talk about a team that has one of the brightest futures in the NBA, it's the Cavs. They have 2 young up-and-coming bigs in Evan Mobley and Jarrett Allen, who Allen just made his first All-Star team. Evan Mobley, who should have won Rookie of the Year, but at 20 years old has been looking incredible in terms of his future potential. Darius Garland still hasn't entered his prime, another first-time All-Star, and now adding Donovan Mitchell, yet another All-Star, and one who is also just entering his prime. The reason I have them at number 7 is, well, while yes, I think that they have a very bright future, it doesn't mean I think that they're going to start just taking over the Eastern Conference now. Still too young, still too inexperienced to have them so high in the East, and yes, their starting lineup looks great, but their depth chart isn't the best. And as I said before, I do question the lack of defense and size from a duo like Garland and Mitchell. I feel like they are going to get bullied by bigger and more physical guards and getting torched on the perimeter. Moving along, because I know this video is dragging on, at 8, I've got the Atlanta Hawks. Probably a surprise for a lot of people. I'm sure a good amount of people feel this team should be in the top 5 after trading for DeJounte Murray, but I personally just don't see it. I actually don't like this fit for their team. I also think that their struggles go beyond just Trae not having a strong supporting star who can defend. Like, for all intents and purposes, this team was bad last season. For a team that was this Cinderella story and making it to the Eastern Conference Finals the year before, to finish as the 9th seed, they would have missed the playoffs entirely had it not been for the play-in. They play their way into the playoffs and then get beaten down by the Heat in 5 games. No, I just don't see how DeJounte Murray makes this team like a sudden contender. They've struggled with their defense. Their offense has been inconsistent. I think they'll be better than last season, but I don't think that they're going to be as good as people think that they'll be. And I think that it's going to take them some time to develop a sense of cohesion and identity before they start making strides. And in a competitive Eastern Conference, there just isn't much room for error to get off to a slow start. So that's why I have them all the way down to 8. But at 9, I think this is where most people are probably going to think I'm crazy, because I have the Toronto Raptors. Look, I know the Raptors finished 5th last season. They had this incredible run towards the end of the year, especially when guys were coming back healthy. They had this great draft pickup in Scotty Barnes, who won Rookie of the Year. They were able to re-sign most of their key role players. They still have Siakam, Van Fleet. My issue with the Raptors, and it's not even really an issue, just something I question, was last season just a case where the Raptors exceeded expectations and it was kind of an isolated year. I liken it to the Knicks, where they were really good a couple years back, finished with the 4 seed and looked to be on the up and up, and then they just didn't even make the play-in the following year. Or the same case with the Hawks that I just talked about, Eastern Conference Final Cinderella team, and then they fell off, because people forget that last offseason, when the major pundits were putting together their Eastern Conference predictions, most had the Raptors 12th or 13th. It was thought that the Raptors were going to be tanking and rebuilding after moving on from Kyle Lowry and some other vets, and then they came out of nowhere and found themselves in the playoffs. And I struggle to see if the Raptors can do that again. They've got some nice talented young pieces, a great coach, but in a strong Eastern Conference, I don't really see them making a ton of strides. 10 through 15 I'm going to go through pretty quickly. 10, I got the Wizards. Beal is going to be back, which will be good for them, and they still have Kyle Kuzma, Porzingis, Hachimura, other young players like Avdia, Kispert. A good team, but not a team that is going to be, playoff bound by any means, not as currently constructed anyway. 11, I have the Knicks. I think they marginally improved by adding Jalen Brunson, but that's not going to put them over the top and into the playoffs, especially if Julius Randle continues to play the way that he did. And I think we need to just come to accept that Tom Thibodeau's coaching style doesn't sit well with players long term. We've seen it for years now with the multiple teams that he's coached in the past. 12, I got the Hornets. Yes, they have LaMelo Ball, but they didn't really do much to improve their roster. Also, LaMelo Ball got injured. In fact, they also lost Miles Bridges, Montrezl Harrell, Gordon Hayward is getting older, and they can't stay healthy. They barely made the play-in last year as the 10 seed. I don't see how they make the play-in this year. 13, I've got the Pistons, and honestly, they could really be higher with all the moves that they made this offseason in drafting some high-value prospects. They've got Cade Cunningham going into his 2nd season after a great rookie campaign, and they just traded for Bojan Bogdanovic. Like, the team should actually be decent. I wouldn't be shocked if they squeaked into the play-in, but for now, I think 13 is where I'll put them. 14, I've got the Pacers. For now, they still have Miles Turner and Buddy Hield. Otherwise, I would probably put them last. They're not going to be good. They're going to be one of the teams in the tank for Wemby sweepstakes, as will the team that I have finishing last in the East, which is the Orlando Magic. Was great for them to be able to get the #1 overall pick, except for they won it a year too early, but they still have a shot at getting that #1 pick in back-to-back drafts, because even with Banchero, Franz Wagner, Wendell Carter Jr., they're still not going to be a good team, and the more losses, the better chances you have at landing this generational prospect in Victor Wembanyama. Anyway, guys, I know this was a really long video. Let me know in the comments what your East predictions are for this upcoming season. And as always, be sure to subscribe if you're a Bulls fan, and I do post daily Bulls content. Thanks again for tuning in, guys, and I'll catch you in the next one.